All right, Marlene PT here with Tasha Powers, COTA, on the Pediatric Telehealth Coffee Hour show. Yes, I am here with author and COTA Tasha Powers, and today we are going to talk with Tasha about potty training for children that are diagnosed with autism. She also developed a toolbox for therapists and parents to help She developed the toolbox for therapists and parents as a guide to teach their children or their patients to be more successful with potty training. It includes checklists, charge schedules, and routines that are really helpful when children are diagnosed with autism to have that structure. We're also going to talk about a book that Tasha wrote called The Holy Grail of Potty Training, which was also written by Stephen R. Graham. And also about the toolbox, it's free. I want to mention that. So it's a free toolbox. So you have to get it. And it's great. So you also have visual cues for, even in telehealth, you can show the parent the visuals because there are a lot of visual learners out there. And then the book is a great tool to have to accompany those things. And there's a 7-day system in there. So we're going to get to all of that. But thank you so much, Tasha, for joining us and agreeing to come on the show to share your knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to go ahead and start with a question to get our viewers to get to know you. So can you tell me a little bit about your background and your experience with helping families that have children with autism and potty training?
Sure. So as I was going to school to be a COTA, I was working with a physical therapy company. I was a tech there. And then before I knew it, I graduated as a COTA, and then I went straight into home health. And almost all of my clients were struggling with potty training or toileting is the phrase we would use in therapy. And then I was working in home health for a year, and then I transitioned to outpatient, still remaining in the pediatrics setting. And there as well, all my caseload pretty much, we were working on toileting goals. And so I quickly realized that there wasn't a lot of resources for us therapists, with visual schedules, toilet training pecs, and if I did find some resources, I would have to pay for them. And so I would, at that point, I would get whatever I could to give the parents. And as you may know, we can only address toileting goals so much at work, because I would only see the kids for, 1 to 2 hours a week. So I was always, searching for something that I can give our parents or that they can go home and implement so we can kind of meet in the middle. So I never found like a really solid book. So that's when I decided, I really need to create something, free resources like a potty training toolbox filled with, like I said, toilet training pecs and visual sequence charts, rewards charts, and they're all individualized. So I created that, and then it goes hand in hand with my book. It's the 7-day toilet training system, and it's OT style. So we also address all the underlying skills that the child needs, and we take into consideration, the environment demands and, the social and the emotional demands that the child would need to become successful in toileting. So every day I would work on toileting, but like I said, I was a little limited. If only I can go to their house and stay with them for a week, then that would be,
Right.
ideal. But, we can't do that. So that's why I decided to create this resources so we can literally team up with the parents so we can address what we can, more of the underlying skills at work, and then, give this to the parents to take home to implement the rest.
Right. And I know that all of us therapists out there are very thankful to that you created this resource, because it is very time consuming to make things on Canva and like other different tools. It just takes so long, so it's nice to have that. And I'm a PT, but I've had parents talk with me about toilet training, and sometimes it's hard because I didn't do a very good job toilet training my own kids.
It's hard.
It is.
It's
I think the
hard.
daycare did it for me. I tried. So can you tell me what are some expectations that a parent and even a therapist, when they're coaching a parent, should have in the differences when they're toileting a typical child and an atypical child?
So with the atypical child, we have to take consideration of where they're at. What are their diagnoses? Where are they at on the spectrum? Are they high functioning, low functioning? And we meet them where they are. And so whenever, I would have a client, most of my clients were really scared of the restroom in general. So they would scream and cry before they would even, sit on the toilet. So what I like to teach my parents is, slowly introduce the concept first. Just take them by the bathroom, and then eventually take them in the bathroom. But when you go in the bathroom, make it a good experience, and maybe even play in there without even touching the toilet or even putting any kind of expectations on them to even use the toilet at that point. Okay. So I like to break it down like that, where you really just got to take your time and really narrow down what they're struggling with, because it could be audio or like sensory. It could be, the toilet room can be intimidating. So my first step would be just to, get them used to that environment first, and then step by step introduce them.
Okay. And I had one of my family members that was potty training her girls. She had a whole bunch of little like mobile potties around her house. Like, is that something that it sounds like would it be a better idea, like what you said, to just play in the bathroom, or what about having mobile potties around the house? Is that something that you've ever done or that you've seen?
So, in my opinion, I do want to mention that it works. If you put, little potties around the house, it works. However, I personally encourage parents not to do that. And the reason why is because how comfortable would you feel going number 2 in the living room? Like, right. We ourselves as adults want privacy. And besides the privacy aspect, I like consistency, and I like to train for the end goal. And I think if we start training around the house with little potties, well, guess what? Eventually we're going to have to retrain and transition to the big potty. So that's why I like to just go straight to the end goal. Okay. However, we have some clients where having little potties around the house would be more ideal. And that's us meeting them in the middle. But if we could, I always encourage to go straight to that.
Okay.
For those 2 reasons.
And when potty training an atypical child, maybe autism or some other like sensory processing disorder, or any of those things, how important is routine and structure when potty training? And can you talk about some of the stuff in your toolbox that would help with the routine and structure?
Absolutely. So I believe that routine and structure and consistency will literally make or break it, make or break success, because the way the brain works is through repetition, and that's how you rewire the brain to, create this new habit. So I think routine and structure is everything. I do understand though, life's hard, especially as a mother, especially with kids who can be kind of unpredictable. It can be hard, to follow a routine and structure, but I always recommend you to do it as much as you can, stay as consistent as you can, because for a neurological point of view, that's how the brain can really wire in this new habit. And that's where the potty training toolbox comes in, because if a parent, if a parent or a therapist were to follow the daytime, nighttime potty routines and stick to those routines every day, then the child will start to grasp the new concept and the idea, because it's the same every day. Therefore, it will increase the success. So everything in the potty training toolbox is routines from the, like I said, from the daytime to nighttime routines to even the toileting sequences. There's about 10 steps in the toileting sequence charts that I created, 2 for boys and 1 for girl. And so it's the same thing every time. So if we teach the child, you know, step by step every time, then they're able to wire that in their brain, developing that new habit.
So it sounds like your toolbox, I mean, it's not just for children with delays or certain diagnosis. It'll be good for all children because that neurologically speaking, like you said, repetition and having those visual cues, especially, you know, when they're potty training their child, they may be about maybe 2 years old, right? Or 2, 3. So having those visual charts will be good no matter what. But I think when you're dealing with a child that really likes that structure and routine, you definitely want to make sure to use those.
Yes, absolutely.
And also, I remember trying to potty train my boys and trying to take them every 5 to 10 minutes. And I'd put them on the potty and they wouldn't go. But like as soon as we got off, they would pee all over the floor. So I've heard of those potty watches, and I'm just curious, like I feel like maybe if I had a timer or an audio cue that it may would have helped that situation. How do you feel about having an audio cue or like a potty watch?
So in my opinion and my experience, I would recommend a potty watch for elimination communication, which is when you potty train a little earlier, like for babies who are, or children who are 6 months to a year. You know, I think the potty watches are more appropriate for the early ages. And when, you know, they turn about 1.5 and older, I think it's more important to go based off of their body cues and their, you know, the bowel and bladder feedback, because a potty watch doesn't necessarily know when the child really needs to go. So you might go, okay, it's time, and then you take the kid to the toilet and he really just doesn't have to go. So he's like, he just sits there and he doesn't have success. So I encourage the parents and the therapists to really practice on identifying their facial body cues, verbal cues, even if they go to a certain spot when they're about to go. And really being kind of a detective in a way, and study your child to the point where, you know, okay, he usually goes 20 minutes after supper, or he usually goes, you know, 30 minutes after breakfast, and then watch him like a hawk. And then when he starts showing those cues, then you take him to the toilet so that he can put 2 and 2 together. Oh, when I feel this way, I go sit on the toilet.
Okay.
You know, so that's what I recommend.
And so I did have a patient at one point that has spina bifida, and they're not, like the parents aren't sure if she even has those feelings, those sensations of knowing when she has to go. So in a situation like that, would a timer be a good idea, or just to take her on a schedule so she may not feel it, but maybe if she tries, something might happen?
See, and that's a great question, because some of the children, you know, in those certain cases, they don't have that bowel and bladder awareness. So in that case, my first thing would be is, okay, why don't we chart out what day she usually goes? What day or what time of day does she use? What's her release schedule? And try to do that first, where, okay, she usually goes around this time. Let's sit her on the toilet at that time. However, if it's just so her bowel and bladder schedule or release schedule is so sporadic, then yeah, I would recommend a potty timer at that point.
Okay, great. And I saw your graphic on the proper sitting posture for toileting. And so for our listeners, can you explain why it is important that your child's feet can rest on a stool or the ground if they have a mobile potty, and why that 90-90 posture is so important?
Absolutely. So you know, this goes back to ancient times. You know, when they would use the bathroom back then, they would literally go in a squatting position. And the reason for that is because of the way the GI tract is, the way the opening goes. So yeah, so when you just sit straight up, which most kids do, they want to like even lean backwards, but that doesn't allow the GI tract to, I don't even know how to say it, but line up the way it should. Versus if you lean forward, and you do the 90-90, then it really straightens out the GI tract, allowing the bowel and bladder to release much more easily. And it's very, very important because then it decreases constipation and it just makes the whole experience much better. And especially with the little ones, they definitely need a stool to prop up the feet to give that 90-90 position.
And it moves the coccyx out of the way.
There, yes.
So that way, because if you're leaning back, your coccyx is going to get in the way and you may not go as easily, right?
Yep. That's it right there. So.
And so I know I've seen, kids potty training with pull-ups with those like cloth undies. I tried the cloth undies, or they walk around without any underwear in the buff when they're at home. So what do you recommend when they're in the privacy of their home? How would you, what do you see the most success in?
I see the most success, and I'm talking night and day success, is whenever you do at least 3 solid days of the bear approach. And the reason for that is because since the baby was born, he was getting that tactile input from that diaper, right? And his brain is just used to releasing. And so whenever it's time to potty train, it's important to take away that tactile input so that it gives a different signal to the brain. And they almost feel, they get that feedback, they're like, wait a second. They might not speak on it, but they're like, wait a second, this feels weird. I feel wet. They get not only feedback from the brain that they don't have that tactile input, but they also get the feedback from like soiledness or just like wetting themselves and just being bare in general. So I recommend the bear approach 100% for at least the first 3 days. And it could take 3 to 7 days, depending on the child. Every child is different. Some can take a month, there's no wrong way. And so I strongly recommend the bear approach due to the tactile input that they receive, which will result in that.
So then even like with the, so it would be like bear, and then the second best would be a cloth one, because they could still feel that they're wet and dirty and that they may not feel comfortable. And then pull-ups, not recommended. Of course, in daycare, they may make them, if they're potty training. So I know I've heard that babies that have cloth diapers are more likely to get potty trained faster. So that makes sense too, because then they can feel like they're wet. And would that be, so I know sometimes children with autism can have like sensory deficits also. So does that kind of also help them because of that? Maybe because like what you said, they don't like the way that it feels. So would that be like a great way to get them to potty train faster too, just because in that sense also? It's like whether they have autism or not, but maybe more so if they have a sensory thing where they feel even more uncomfortable, then they're more likely to use the bathroom.
Yes, that's a great input for them.
And also I noticed on the potty sequence chart for boys, and I may have missed it if it was on there. So one of my boys, he likes to sit down and pee. Like he just kind of tucks it and then goes and sits down and pee. And I know it's in the chart, the boys are all standing up, and he can stand up and pee. He just prefers that. So what are your thoughts about a boy sitting down and peeing? Is that okay? I think that's even how we maybe potty trained him, was sitting down.
Yeah, I think that's totally okay. That's totally okay. And as a matter of fact, I've had some other OTs reach out and, ask the same question. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The reason why I always like to, I always think about the end result, the end goal, and I want to promote independence to the highest level. And so that's why I created that, the boys potty sequence chart peeing, because when he gets older, and I'm sure he's going to end up transitioning on his own anyway, but I want to, if they can, and if they have all the, the if they're developmentally ready, and if they can, then yeah, I would recommend them standing, because when he goes to a public bathroom and he sees, the older men standing peeing, which I don't even know if he'd be able to reach, or they do have the little ones in there actually, but I would like, to promote confidence and independence. So that's the only reason why. However, like I said, there's nothing wrong with sitting and peeing either, because eventually they'll transition. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna create a potty for boys, pee, but him sitting. So one for standing and then one for sitting for those who train for that.
Okay, great. And also for the parents listening, when do you suggest to start potty training? I know we talked about like watch your child's body movements and their cues on to know when they have to go. And then what if your child's already approaching 3 years old and they're not showing any of those, the body language that they're ready to be potty trained? Should you start anyways?
I would start anyways, because at that point, maybe they just, maybe they haven't been taught to even be aware of bowel and bladder. So if they're 3 years old and they're not even recognizing, which happens, you'll have a 3-year-old who's just playing and he don't care, or he don't even realize. But if the mom or parent or guardian starts to say, starts to bring out those cues to the child, then maybe, he could start understanding, oh, okay, I just went pee, or I just went poo. So at 3 years old, I would definitely start trying for sure. And I think you can start as early as 6 months old. However, at 6 months, they don't have the trunk control to hold themselves up, but you can do like elimination communication, where you start, introducing that to the child at that age. But the ideal age, it could be, a year and a half to 2 years old. I think is a really good time to start.
Okay. And I know you also have the other book, Now I Know How to Go Potty. So I'm just curious, and I know if a child has different diagnoses, it could be a little bit longer or different, but in general, at what age should a child be able to wipe their own bottom after a bowel movement? Because I know sometimes, not nearly as often anymore, but my 6 and 8 year old would be like, Mom, like when they've had a big one. So I'm just curious, by what age should you, maybe if they ask, be like, sorry, you got to figure it out.
I think 6 and 7, honestly, at that point, as I think that's a tough one, because I think they should always try independently. But yeah, even sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to wipe more, so like, I don't think it's like, something to worry about. I think, they should be able to wipe themselves at least by 10, depending on the diagnosis, by 10, they should be able to wipe it clean, or at least know what's good wiping and what's not.
Right. And I know also, like, one of my children, he has suffered from constipation. So I know that he hasn't really been trained as much in knowing when he's clean, because if he's constipated when he goes and they're kind of a harder poop, then he's not really dirty. But then when he does actually go, then he's kind of like, wait a minute, like, Mom, help me, because, so I like what you said, it kind of just depends probably on each child and their needs. But I do have another question. Now that we're getting personal, talking about like poop and pee. Yes. So I always tell my kids that it's okay, like, look at the toilet paper, because you're not going to know if you're clean unless you look, right? Yep. And my husband tells them, no, don't look at it, that's gross. And I'm like, how are they going to know if they're clean? And so then we kind of compromise. And so I said, okay, you don't have to look after the first wipe, because you're probably not clean yet. But I guess right. So now at least, I'm hoping that you agree with me, so I could tell him, hey, I talked to a toileting expert, and this is what she said.
I agree with you.
Okay, yes. How are you gonna know? So I'm gonna let him know that you agreed with me, so there we go. Our fight is ended.
That's funny.
And then also, let's see, I'm kind of have my questions written out here. So the book, The Holy Grail for Potty Training, I know it's a 7-day system to help parents and a tool for therapists to help coach parents. And it's geared towards autism, but we talked about all of the tools in your toolbox and book are good for any parent. Can you give us a tip from your book that we can't find in the toolbox?
Honestly, everything is within the toolbox and in the book. Everything is in the toolbox, and you won't even need to read the book. However, if you want all the fine details, I would definitely recommend the book because it breaks down everything in the toolbox and it explains why and how to implement them.
Okay.
And so everything, I was writing this book for a very long time and I gathered data from all angles. So everything, is in that toolbox and is in the book. So.
Okay. So does it kind of help you personalize the toolbox to your child and then incorporate it into a 7-day? Like, are you supposed to have your child potty trained by the 7-day, or it puts everything in place so you can keep on going if you need to pass the 7 days?
It puts everything in place for you. So in the book, it's like, oh, okay, now's the time to pull out this from the toolbox. And then you keep reading, and then it's like, okay, now pull this from the toolbox. So it literally walks you through everything, and it tells you when to use the resource at a specific time.
Okay. Yeah, because if you pull out everything at once, that might be overwhelming when you're just trying to. That makes sense. Wow. Well, Tasha, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to add?
I do want to add the Now I Know How to Potty. This literally breaks down the 10 steps of toileting in a rhyming way. It rhymes.
Oh, cute.
So it's like the visual sequence charts that I put in there. This is like a children's book version of it. And it's a social story, which is a great great way for children to learn is through social stories. So this book is a big brother teaching his little brother how to potty, but it breaks down the sequence, each step in the sequence, so the child could really start to program, the steps of toileting.
Okay, great. And then I know in the equipment checklist, that book that's in your toolbox, the book to get the link to get that book is in there. And then the link to get the Holy Grail of potty training is in there, and all of the routines and everything. So I'll post in the description my affiliate link to access her toolbox and everything in it. So Tasha, I always like to ask this at the end of an interview. How do you drink your coffee or your morning drink? What is it?
I was drinking coffee for a while, and then my skin kind of didn't like it. So now I drink green tea because it's natural caffeine. So I go to Sprouts and I get my green tea, my Buddha green tea, and I drink it every morning.
Do you put honey or anything in it, or just by whatever?
Oh yeah, I put like a big old spoon of honey. I love honey. I don't use any sugar. So,
and I've heard in like England they put milk in their tea. Is that?
I've heard of that, and I've tried it, and I didn't really like it. I don't do good with dairy anyway, though. So
I'm craving green tea, so I'm gonna get some. But yes. Thank you again, and I'm gonna go ahead and end our broadcast. Thank you, everybody that got to join in. And if you have any questions for Tasha, she is a member of our group. You can put it in the comments under the posting of the video, and she can answer your questions there. So didn't we double check the comments here? Yep, we don't have any questions. So thank you everyone, and have a great Saturday.